Welcome to the Wicked Podcast, where we read the business books you don't have the time for. I'm Marcus Kirsch.
And I'm Troy Norcross.
And we are your co-hosts for the Wicked Podcast.
We take from the thousands of business books out there and test the author's ideas by comparing them to real-world challenges. With over 40 years of projects between us, we've got quite a bit to compare against. We give you the condensed takeaways, followed by our review with the authors.
We know you want actions, not theories, and it's actions that we want to help shape, because that's what the Wicked Podcast is all about, helping you to become a wicked company.
So, Marcus, first off, I have to tell you how impressed I am that you actually got David Marquet to come on the show today. I know how popular he is, and I know how much he's one of your favorite authors. So this has got to be a real treat for you today.
Oh, indeed. Yeah. One of my life dreams, I guess, to get someone like him here. One of my favorite books, Alvin Toffler, unfortunately, is dead. So that's not going to happen. So this is the second best, I think, at this point. A man with an absolute striking history, a nuclear submarine captain who turned the worst ship in the fleet into the best performing ship in the fleet for years to come, having the best graduates or higher ranking people coming out of that because of the way he changed the management, the hierarchy, the decision making on that ship.
In an environment like the U.S. Navy, where change of things is not just frowned upon, it's positively squashed. He got to put two fingers up to all of that and said, there is a better way and we're going to do it here.
Yeah, it's a nearly, and I looked it up, I think it's 247 years since the US Navy was created. So it's near a quarter of a millennial age-old institution.
America is only 200 years old, so it's unlikely 247 years old.
Is it? What did I look up? Oh, maybe it was the British Navy. Let's say it was the British Navy. Okay, that's straight. Okay, let's wind that back.
Yeah, well, you can edit that part out.
Yeah. Shit. I think I might have said that when we started.
Don't worry. I don't think you did. I would have picked you up on it.
1-2 second break and then I go in there. Yeah. A man with the most striking of stories, a US Navy nuclear submarine captain who turned the worst ship in the fleet into the best ship in the fleet in a very old organization, or relatively amazingly old military organization that basically is known for top down.
Yeah, and they're very rigid about it. They don't want to change. And so he went in and kind of put two fingers up and said, we're going to do it differently.
Exactly. And he proved that this works better. It's one of the best examples as well for the whole idea of, system X and system Y, theory X and theory Y, to say, trust in the people around you, trust in the expertise they have, and enable them, don't empower them. So the whole empowering thing is really interesting. But so, a striking character. An amazing man, and
his idea of moving authority to where the information is. One of our very first interviews with Sunny talked about moving decision making down to the bottom, as she was talking about the ant colonies, because that was where the information was, and that's where the decisions were to be made. But before we go into all of this stuff, normally you ask me, I'm going to ask you this time, what are your two big takeaways?
Yes, so it was very compressive. I think there was a lot in there, maybe more than others, however. So it's a bit harder to pick because I think there was a lot of really essential things. I think big thing for me was, and that's what his second book is all about, is about language. The way we use language as leaders or anywhere else when we sit around the table and discuss things and try to agree on things and try to take action, we need to change. We need to develop a language or agree to use a language that is open and allows for every voice to come through. Something that enables people to speak out and show their intent, and therefore transparency to actually be able to be happening. I think the language aspect is a big one, and you know how much I am all about that, to create a universal language that actually helps better problem solving, because there's tons of statistics and evidence and research around exactly that, to be very contributing to better outcomes. So the language, I think, is the big one. I think the other one is he also talked about, and that's something that really comes home to a lot of transformation and organizational recommendations, is that companies like to say, well, there will be some that we can't take on board or with us. So sorry for that pun. Is essentially saying, X% we need to let go. He didn't have the opportunity to let someone go. He was on the tour for weeks on end, and he had to get the best performance out of everyone who's there. And he himself said, look, the actual percentage of someone really not being able to perform just about well enough is actually quite tiny. What's likely is your percentage of that in your organization is higher because you don't trust the people to be able to do their job. And they're closest to that, so they're probably the best at doing their job. So if you enable them, that number will be so small, you actually don't have to worry about it. Because it's something that's, in the end, not in your control. And he gave us a little list of things that are not in your control, so you actually shouldn't be worrying about it. So just get on with the job and try to enable people. So knowing that is smaller than you think, and the clarity he had to describe that, I found really, really actionable.
Mm-hmm. So my two takeaways are, in the what would I tell clients if I was going to be giving advice based on the David Marquet book, Turn the Ship Around. Be the most curious person in the room, not the most knowledgeable. You don't have to always be the smartest person in the room, but it's really good to be the most curious person in the room and to try to explore and uncover what it is that you don't know from the other people that are in the room. And the second one resonated because I've had half of the phrase for quite a long time of building trust through transparency. And he says, expose your thinking and to build trust through transparency over time. It's not something you can build trust overnight. It does indeed take time. And exposing your thinking, especially for the millennial generation, exposing the way they think, exposes what they know, exposes their thinking process. And in that transparency, helps them to build and develop trust so that when leadership does decide to push authority where the information exists, there's trust there as well.
Definitely. And talking about time, the time for this, the time for that. I think let me have a look at the time. Oh, is that?
Oh my, Marcus, what an amazing watch. Now you know what time it really is, don't you?
It is. I'm looking at my little Russian military watch, and it says it's time to go to the interview, I think. So, hello everyone. Today we speak to a man who successfully challenged and improved the US Navy's near 250-year-old model of top-down or leader-follower decision-making process. David Marquet, thank you for making time for us, sir, and welcome to the show.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Marcus and Troy, for having me on your show.
So, as usual, we start at the top to any of our listeners and followers who might not know you, to please tell us who you are and why you wrote the book.
Yeah, I was a submarine commander in the United States Navy, nuclear submarine commander, and I had a very interesting experience. At the very last minute, after being trained for one submarine, I got shifted to a different submarine, different kind of submarine. And so here I am as the captain. And we were deliberately told your job as leader is to make decisions and get people to do what you decide they should do. We weren't shy about that. And it was on the strength of my ability to make good decisions and puzzle through problems and solve things that I was made selected to be a submarine commander. Well, anyway, when I was thrown into this environment where I didn't know the submarine because it was a different kind of submarine at the very last minute. Why? Because the previous captain quit. It was the worst performing submarine in the fleet with the worst morale. That was the only two problems. And he quit a year early, and they said, oh, yeah, you're not going to go to where you were thought. You're going to go to the Santa Fe instead. And so I show up, and I had this really interesting experience where basically the conclusion I came to was that all of our leadership training and programming is on a outdated model. And these assumptions about how organizations are supposed to be run so deeply, we generally don't even question them. Like, well, of course my job is to make a decision. And of course it is to get other people to do it. Like, what else could my job be? We don't even see the potential for a better world. And so we had this experience, we set awards, we did all this stuff in the near term, which was wonderful. But the key is over the next 10 years, more submarine commanders came from this one submarine than any submarine. And then I wrote the book because I was pissed off and angry and depressed, because I was suffering from not that kind of leadership. I was suffering the kind of leadership where I was being told what to do and my thoughts weren't appreciated. And it made me angry. And I could see the effect on human beings that we were doing. These are good people doing bad things to people, thinking they were doing good things to people. And that was having a huge stress on people's happiness, lives, and health. It had an impact, significant negative impact on my own health. And I got out of the Navy, and I was this anger and frustration drove me to write the book so I could tell the story. Hey, it doesn't need to be like this, ladies and gentlemen. It can be better.
Really, writing a book from a place of really deep-seated passion probably gave you a lot of kind of incentive to and drive to kind of get up every day and go about doing it, which sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it was so hard. That was a hard year of my life. I'm an engineer. So I'm a math guy. I was on the math team, and I'm kind of an action-oriented person. This idea of like, let's do stuff really appeals to me. And then to sit down in front of my computer and to write stories was just the most worst torture you could do to me. But I was driven by the anger that I had. And people say, well, that's really unhealthy. You shouldn't. Like, I don't know. That anger, I think, drives a lot of good change. And so for me, it's not bitterness. Bitterness maybe is not that helpful, but just like, listen, it doesn't need to be this crappy at work. We don't need to be killing ourselves. And the thing that was really frustrating for me was I would see these behaviors in leaders. They were not evil people. They thought they were doing the right thing. Mm. They thought they're running around and telling people was doing that, holding people accountable, quote, mentoring them, which really meant just telling them how screwed up they were. Those were all good things, and they're not.
Yeah, I think there's something that a lot of people can relate to. Troy and me, we work a lot in change and transformation, and the frustration there's the same. It definitely drove me to write my book as well, so we have that in common. So it's a great energy, not the best, but it's also quite cathartic. It's like something getting out. You think with it differently. You have time and space to maybe think about it a bit differently, or sometimes just I just need to tell someone, and this is a process that doesn't stop me. No one can stop me on this one because I'm writing it. But it's also a very lonely process at the same time. And I think given especially looking at, because there's so many organizations where thousands, if not millions of people work. And if you look at some of the statistics that come back from McKinsey, is that most organizations that run a particular hierarchy, people are just suffering in there. And again, as you said, people think they're doing the right thing. They have all the best intentions, but they don't even see that there is an alternative way. So in particular in that one, I'd like you to elaborate a little bit, because it's in the book and it's also in a Harvard Business Review article you wrote, where you wrote about the myth of leadership. And one of the quotes there is, you said, I'm sour on the word empowerment. And you make a statement, I think, about the difference between empowerment and enablement, or that empowerment itself is just there's a flaw in there. Could you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. So here's my experience of empowerment. The boss would stand up and say, well, you're all empowered to speak up. You're all empowered to come up with ideas. You're all empowered, blah, blah, blah. And I said, oh, well, thank you. What were we before you empowered us? Well, I guess you must have been unempowered. So I would say, well, it seems like you have the power because you're the one who gave us power, and therefore you're the one who can take that power away. It just rang really hollow to me. And basically people, I would see leaders use this phrase empowerment as an excuse. It was laziness. Rather than them figuring out what they should do, the way they should run a meeting, the way they should ask questions, which made it easier for the rest of us to contribute what we had inside of us already, that they wouldn't do that hard work of self-reflection and self-change. They would do the easy thing by just point to us and say, well, it's on you, you're empowered. And again, that was one of the things that just made me really angry. I would be the guy who get the memo that you weren't supposed to ask the admiral those uncomfortable questions. And I would say, well, it doesn't seem like I think, like, look, you don't need to empower people. They already have power. Anyone with kids knows you don't need to tell a 2-year-old or a 3-year-old, oh, you can go try crawling, you can try walking, you don't need to tell people that. What we do is we beat it out of them in the education system. Because we don't want to empower people. We want people to conform. We want them to do what we tell them to do when we tell them to do it and the way that we tell them to do it. And then when they come up short, then we're going to quote, hold them accountable because blah, blah, whatever. Well, you decided what to do. You decided when it was due. You decided what resources I had. And now you have the guts to, quote, hold me accountable. And again, this is an icky feeling. This made me angry. People don't need to be controlled. They need to be coordinated. That's the key. And the problem in a modern hierarchy is not bad. You have to have hierarchy. Denying hierarchy is bad because denying hierarchy means we're going to pretend that something's not there, that it's actually there. So it's like denying gender, denying race. Look, it's there. So it's how you use the hierarchy. And the problem is the way most organizations use hierarchy is, number one, they channel information up and authority down. That's the opposite of what you ought to be doing. And the second thing is they use hierarchy as a cascading control mechanism. So everyone in the hierarchy's job is to control the person below them and be controlled by a person above them. Now, this is one of the most stressful things you can do to a human is tell them they have to try and control something that they can't fundamentally control, i.e. another person. And to be controlled, to not feel like you're in control of yourself. So the structure of hierarchy where we're all trying to control the people below us is inherently stress. You can have degrees of stress, but once you buy into that fundamental model, there's stress because control is misaligned to what we can actually control. Attempted control is misaligned to what we can actually control. And so we spend our whole lives being angry and frustrated because I'm trying to control someone I can't, and somebody's controlling me, which pisses me off.
So in the book, you talk about the 3 principles of control, competence, and clarity, and trying to really understand those in completely new and different ways. And without giving away too much of the book, I really enjoyed how you put those 3 together and then showed that control, as you say, is authority down and information up instead of the other way around.
Yeah, so there's 2 things there. Number one, what we say is push authority to where the information is. So in other words, rather than buy some software program where you can aggregate information for the top so that they can make decisions and pass it back down, what you want to do is figure out how to push the decisions closest to the person who has the information natively. Let that person, you get so many. First, you get speed of execution, you get ownership and engagement, and they feel better about their jobs. Otherwise, everyone in the organization is just a doer and a data taker, and they get told by somebody else what to do. Who wants that?
Right.
0.0 humans want that, in my personal opinion.
All right, so I'm going to go on one of my semi-favorite topics.
Okay.
The new younger workforce who arrive out of uni, and on day one, they want to be vice president, Mrs. Smith, in charge of making all the decisions for, and they have a huge sense of entitlement that comes right out of the chute. And there's no sense of, I need to learn what I'm supposed to be doing. I need to kind of bed in. I need to kind of participate and communicate within the organization before I'm handed all of this authority. I don't have all the information. How do we tell our clients? So Marcus and I we're consultants. How do we tell our clients, this is how you deal with the new generation workforce?
Okay. Very good. So there's a couple quick things. So first of all, the idea behind control, competence, and clarity is, I was going to show a slide, but I can't. Apparently I can't.
Well, I can make you presenter, don't worry.
No, it's telling me I have to download some smart virtual background. I guess because I updated my Zoom. Okay, there
it is.
Go.
It works.
Here's the deal. So on the submarine, one of the things that what I was fundamentally trying to do was to let people be in control of themselves. I was giving them control of their own actions. I went too far. It turns out that there's what limits you in your ability to make decisions, controls the ability to make decisions about, say, the nuclear reactor, is, do you technically know the nuclear reactor? And so that's technical competence. And then, do you understand what we're trying to do with the submarine or the organization? That's what we call organizational clarity. This is your why. Now, when I'm talking to millennials, so you don't want to go this way, you want to go this way. So let's say I'm talking to a group of younger workers. What I say to them is, hey, look, if you want to make it easy for your boss to give you decision-making authority, you don't do that by saying, well, why are you asking me questions? You want to prove yourself. You want to open the word is expose your thinking. Hey, I have a decision coming up. Here's how I'm thinking about it. Make that thinking better. How should I think about it better? It's through this exposure of your thinking that you're going to gain the ability to make bigger and bigger decisions, not by hiding your thinking. Your job is to build your technical competence. Look, you don't know anything. You know 0.0 about anything. Rough order of magnitude. So prove that you know something, because if I don't know what put yourself in the shoes of your boss. I don't know you. Yeah, you got a certificate from wherever. What do I care? I don't know you. I don't know what you know. I don't know what your competence is. So expose your competence. Don't say, oh, well, I have a certificate from ABC University, therefore you shouldn't question me. That's the exact opposite thing you're going to do. Trust comes from transparency over time. And it comes from the opposite of what we have this impulse to do. You should just trust me. Now, leaders, when I'm talking to leaders, what I say, well, your job is actually trust first. In a small way, ask questions like, hey, if you were going to make this decision, what would you do? If I weren't here, where would you go with this? And it's almost imaginary trust, because you're still get the opportunity to veto. Our key word is intent. So, hey, just tell me what you intend to do. I don't like just do it leadership. I think that's a big mistake a lot of organizations make. Oh, we'll do really good with empowerment. We just want people doing stuff. Yeah, you want chaos, you want a mess, you want lots of uncoordinated activity, just do that. Imagine cars going down the highway, multi-lanes. This turn signal is people signaling intent. Hey, I'm going to change lanes. No one's honking. They must not be. No one sees that it's a problem. I can change, safe to change lanes. So the idea is, by stating your intent, what we get is coordination among the people. People say, oh, we're going to have a self-organizing team. How? Well, I don't know. They're going to self-organize. Well, give me one tool that's going to have them self-organize. Nothing. Zero. Well, we're going to have a discussion. How is this discussion going to be structured? What's the first question? No idea. It's a lot of muddled nonsense. You want self-organizing teams, tell people to state what they intend to do prior to doing it publicly to the rest of the team. Now other people can react and they say, and by the way, how can I make this better? And or what's everyone's thought on this? And then the rest of the team, oh, I have to do this before you can do that. Or, hey, if you do that, then it's going to really affect me here. Okay. Now you get the function of self-organization comes as a result of people stating their intent. If you want to make it impossible to self-organize, just tell people to just do stuff.
Yeah. Before I hand over to Marcus, I've got a story to tell. I worked for Nokia for a while, and one of my projects was a global project where I had a team in London, Helsinki, in Mumbai and Delhi, and in China and in California. And it was a follow the sun management sort of thing where somebody who was working for me was always awake, and I really wanted to be able to sleep. It wasn't going to be possible. So I called it my empty chair management. Okay, pick a room, pick a chair, say Troy's in that chair. What would Troy say, think, do, or decide? Do that, get on with it, and hopefully no one's going to die. And if it's the wrong decision, we'll figure out why and take corrective action, but do not wait on me. And I was doing that back in 2007, but I think you've added so much to what I was doing back then. Would love to have had you read your book, because I would take the cross communication and the open transparency a step further.
Well, so I love that. I think that's awesome. But again, what you're doing is you're taking people to level 6. You're just saying, just do it. And the problem is when you get people there is they often don't communicate. I would say, send an email, say you're doing it. Even if the time is really short, in 5 minutes, we're going to do that. We're going to launch the product. In 2 days, we're going to take the product down for whatever it happens to be, but announce it ahead of time. The key is with intent. If you don't hear a response, you still have permission to do it. That's what frees the team. No one's waiting. That's most organizations are what we call permission-based organization, which means here's how you know. If there's no response to your comment or your request, do you do it or not do it? In a permission-based organization, the answer is no, you don't. You wait for permission. I need a head nod, yes, or the answer is no. In an intent-based organization, absent a no, I'm going to do it. So you can sleep because you know that if they send a thing, and they say an email, and they say beginning of shift, in 6 hours, we're going to do this. And they don't hear from you in 6 hours, great, time's up, boom, we're doing it.
Yeah.
They don't care. You don't care. Everyone's good. But you want to be in the habit of having them announce it ahead of time, even if it's very short. On the submarine, we might say things like, shutting ventilation valve 1, boom. And then it would be just 1 second, but it would still be announce, then do. Because there may be someone in the control room that hears that and says, oops, we've got a fan running, I got to shut it down. Shutting ventilation fan 1. Oop, shutting down fan 1, boom, boom. Otherwise, that's the kind of thing. So it can be very quick, but it's announce, then do.
And so for those that didn't know, there's a 7 leadership levels that David has put together that are really, really important. He's got a couple of really great videos out on that, but I'm going to dominate this conversation and Marcus going to hate me. So I'm going to turn it over to Marcus. Thank you, David.
Oh, thank you, sir. So the other thing, I mean, it's interesting. I think the transparency thing is just, again, same my experience. When you work, for example, a big project at BT where you have 14,000 people and we work with a few hundred people together there, the complexities are insane. There's certain things where leadership doesn't scale well, which means the communication there it needs these kind of things, very quick, simple checkbacks and levels of transparency so that you can actually manage the thing and enough people know what actually is going on to say, hang on a second, we might want to do the other thing before. And I recognized some of that. It's really good to see that some organizations pick up more and more of that through, agile stand-ups where oftentimes you stay there in the morning and you just try to keep them as short as possible, 10, 15 minutes. And at least you know what everyone's doing, which means you can announce any blockers, any help someone needs. If not, they just say what they want to do, and then they go ahead and the rest of the day and do what they want to do. So it's a similar principle, which is really great. But asking then apart from those kind of transparencies, especially given that in your experience, so you had a team that was underperforming, the morale was quite down. or, they were probably interconnected. A lot of times when you work on big transformation and change projects, organizations tend to say, well, there will be a certain percentage of people who will not be able to come along with us, and they might have to leave. Some will be able to do, some people won't be able to change, not get into the mindset. And where the fault of that is obviously a complex answer. But the question for me is then, in your scenario, you likely had to go with the crew you had, and then for weeks, that was the crew you were given. What are sort of the parts there that you have when you started to implement, especially something slightly new that some people might have been uncomfortable with, and you started to, energize them around, like, yeah, let's really go for this thing, and you have come across certain problems and challenges. What can you do to bring, let's say, the lower performing aspect of your team up to scratch, and sort of what do you do in those scenarios where you only have that team and that's all you got?
Yeah, so these are the things not in my control as a submarine commander. Who I had on my team, what positions they were in, the resources I had, and what our operational schedule was. Now, people tend to focus on these things when they want to do a transformation. And it turns out none of these actually are the most important things. The most important thing is how the team interacts, how they talk to each other. It's plain and simple. And as a result, we get distracted. Oh, I need the right people, blah, blah, blah. Like, well, you're running the meeting wrong. So it doesn't really matter who you get, you're still going to have suboptimal outcomes in your meetings. And so number one, it's always a choice. You can't mandate for people. This is the biggest change. If I'm watching people in an industrial age factory, let's say it's a textile mill and there's sewing machines, I can see the fabric going down, the machine spinning. It's very visual. I can see it. I can measure it very easily. And what's happening now in your work, in most people's work, because algorithms are eating away at that kind of work, is thinking. It does not lend itself to that kind of visual imagery. And so as a result, it's much harder to control. If I'm trying to control, I can to a degree control someone operating a sewing machine because I can see when they slow down. I can't see when your thinking slows down. I can't see that you're only giving me 10% of your brain and 90% you're thinking about what you're going to do when you get off work. I can't see those things. So everything is volunteered. And so we need to design a workplace where people are volunteering their effort. We have to recognize it's all volunteered. So we can't order people into an empowerment program. We can invite them. Now that's the key. So, and there will be people who don't want to participate. Now, I personally think that this percentage of humans is incredibly low. I think it's made larger by the fact that we've conditioned people into doing what you're told. And the best thing about doing what you're told is an absence of responsibility, because the number one excuse for being screwed up is to say, I was told to do. You think those engineers at Volkswagen were all said, yeah, no, it was all our idea to make this cheat the diesel engine thing. No, we were told to do this. We were sent signals that this was what the organization wanted. So it's about volunteer. So the other thing though, is you want to put people in a place where they're going to be successful. And if someone's just really uncomfortable and say, I think this is crazy, I really don't want it. Fine, I can find a job for you where you just do what you're told. It's not in my organization, but I'll help you find that. So and then the final thing is, again, don't focus on their behavior. Controlling their behavior is the wrong approach. Leaders think to themselves, well, what's my behavior that will result in the behavior that I want? So let's say someone is not speaking up in a meeting. Well, how am I acting? How am I asking the question? And over again, when we asked questions like that, we found that we were the cause of people. We were the cause. Why is there people not feeling ownership? Because I was stealing their ownership. So just stop stealing people's ownership. Well, what do you mean? When I walk down there and say, hey, Marcus, how are we doing on the project? I just stole some of your ownership. It's now my project. If I say, Marcus, you come give me an update when you think it's necessary, and you come to me and say, hey, need to get on your calendar. I'm going to give you a project update. Hey, here's what's going on. Bop, bop, bop. Here's what we did. Bop, bop. Here's what I intend to do. Bop, bop, bop. Now it's your project. But I get impatient. I haven't structured the organization to operate that way. And so I send out the email. Hey, Marcus, what's going on with the project? When am I going to get another update? And then I'm like, Marcus, where's your ownership? You're like, dude, you stole my ownership.
Interesting. We're going to be short on time, so I'm going to ask for a couple of quick answers. Some of our listeners are indeed, not that your answers weren't quick before, but some of our listeners are entrepreneurs. Some of them are solopreneurs. They may have either tiny teams, they may be working with friends, they may be outsourcing. What kind of advice do you have for people who are working in a non-classic kind of big corporate environment?
Well, cherish it.
Okay.
I mean, there's probably a reason, and it's probably because they got fed up with trying to control other people and being controlled by others. And yeah, short answer, cherish it.
Okay, that's great. Marcus, you got a quick one?
Yeah, I'm sure. So I think I was looking at, so talking about, transparency and everyone being able to talk is a theme that keeps coming up, not only because it's now been for a long time been supported by positive statistics on performance de-risking and so on. Famously, or somewhat famously, surely, Google did a massive piece of research called Project Aristotle that you might be familiar with, about what are their best performing teams. So one of the best skills they had accounted to the best performing team is like, well, they let everybody talk. Everyone on the table has a voice, right? Yeah, you wanted to comment on it?
Well, I would just say the way you said that, they let everybody talk. It's not the way I would, first of all, yeah, Project Aristotle is a great thing.
Yeah.
They let everyone talk. That's not how I would say. I'd say they created a structure or a culture in which it was easy and safe to talk. It's about creating and making it safe for people to talk. And the job of that is the leader. And this is actually what my new book, Leadership as Language, is all about. It's about, and we use different teams. We looked at transcripts. One of them is this ship that sank in this hurricane. And what you see is that people, even in good situations, are doing behaviors. There's a couple examples, and I've actually been on this show a couple times. Number one, we ask binary questions. Does that make sense? Right? That actually suppresses the person who thinks it's different. That makes it harder for the person who says, no, it doesn't make sense. What you want to say is, so what could be wrong? What are we missing? How am I misjudged this? What am I not seeing? Ask the question that makes it easier for the person who sees something different than you to speak up. Number one. Number two, running a meeting in a way that we talk about it first simply anchors the group to the social norm. If the whole group thinks one thing, it's just more and more difficult to speak up against the group. So what you actually want to do is vote first, then have the discussion. Rarely do I see leaders run meetings this way. So we run key decision meetings in ways that intentionally, that the meeting structure is designed to actually reduce dissent. Why? Because we talk first, then we vote. That's not the way you want to do it. Anyway, go ahead. Sorry, I was just lit up on that.
That's great. Good. That's what we like, and it's definitely better description. And it probably just tells how often we are just indoctrinated on, using a language that is just that doesn't even give that space, right?
That's exactly right. We're all programmed. So this whole new book was all about, why am I saying it? It's like, why am I programmed to, why would I say blah, 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 right? Why did I say that? I don't want to say that. I want to say da, 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 wrong, or like, how could this be? But we just have these natural ways of speaking, which are inherently anchored in the industrial age. And it's about reducing variability and it's a premature rush to reduce variability and uncertainty, which is cognitive laziness.
Yeah.
And then we have horrendous decisions like Deepwater Horizon or 737 MAX or Dieselgate or Wells Fargo or.
Yeah. So maybe just then as a last question, if we're looking at that and we're looking at that, you mentioned earlier, hierarchy needs to be there. It's always somewhat there, but decision making and who has the power of decision making needs to drastically change the way it's set up. In that sense, when you talk to your clients, how often, or do you sometimes, in which way do you propose to either management to say like, well, management layers should disappear, or is there a different way to look at what management therefore means? Am I
Yeah, so
asking that
first of all,
openly enough?
I could see you struggling with the way you asked the question, and that was
Yeah,
really
I'm
great.
very conscious about this now.
So look, you can hire a lot of companies that are going to tell you to do a reorg and change management levels and all that. We don't do anything with that. Part of it comes from my experience in the Navy. I couldn't change any of that. So I'm not the right person to ask about that. Ask somebody else. Here's what we're really good at. We're good at taking whatever structure you have and making the language that you guys use in meetings, in one-on-one conversations, in email, on texting, better in a way that naturally makes it easy for people to speak up. Everyone's organization came from this, an industrial age model. What's the model? Leaders, followers, thinkers, doers. These people get these people to do what this person decided they needed to do. And the problem is, well, we can change a policy. I can write it, whatever it is, but the language that people use, the way we talk in meetings and one-on-one conversations, what sounds normal, like we have all hands. If I go to a software company in Silicon Valley for their annual all hands meeting, and no one thinks it's weird.
Yeah. I have the privilege of working for a startup that's based in Hong Kong. I won't name them at the moment, but we've got one particular member of the team who is probably the loudest voice, but always does so in the largest groups and usually throws rocks. It's almost never constructive. And so I'm trying to find a way to coach and to help and to adjust. Yes, you need to have a voice. Yes, you should speak up. And it should be in the spirit of where we're all trying to go together and not just pointing holes in everything you see. So I'm looking for help in that area too, but whatever time.
Yeah, I'd have a hard time with that person. First of all, no one gives a hoot what you think. Okay, you be curious about what other people think. So if someone says something different than you, don't go. I call it be curious, not compelling. Mm. Like don't compel them into what your thinking is. I don't care. Mm. Be curious about what they see that you don't see and what they know that you don't know. Now, at the end, if you're the decision maker, you don't have to do what they seem to be recommending. I'm okay with that, but it happens after an honest, curious, thoughtful investigation, because when you do decide whichever way it is, they're going to say afterwards, well, at least they listened to me. Mm-hmm. Versus now, this loudmouth sucked all the oxygen out of the room again. Mm-hmm. And so the question is, why does this person feel they need to do it? When I talked about this, I talk about this ship yet? I can't remember.
Tell us again.
Yeah, so this ship, this is one of the core stories in Leadership as Language. This ship sailed into a hurricane in 2015 and sank. All 33 people died. And we have a transcript. We have a 500-page transcript. Publicly, the U.S. government collected it, what they said. And one of the things that we did was we simply counted the words. And what we saw was when there were a 3-person team, the captain, an officer, and a crewman on the bridge, and I added up the number of words that happened during that 2-3 hour period that these 3 people were on the bridge. The captain always said the most number of words every time. The officer then said the next most number of words, and then the crewman, usually by a wide disparity. It was kind of like this. Mm-hmm. And they made bad decisions because they all died. So there's a fragility that happens when we have unbalanced. The phrase we use is share of voice. We mathematically compute it into a thing called team language coefficient. But the idea is when it's unbalanced, there's a fragility in the decision-making, because the decision-making will represent what this one person thinks. And no matter how brilliant that person is, when that person makes a mistake, everyone's going to end up great death. So there's an arrogance in thinking you know the answer. I suspect this person is probably smart. They've generally known the answer in school system. The school system reinforced, quote, knowing the answer. Raise your, who knows the answer? Oh, John, oh, John, oh, John. Great, John, you're doing so good. So that's the behavior that you're simply seeing represented. And it's the arrogance of thinking you know the right answer. And even if you do know the right answer, you want to create a mindset where you're not sure because the other person is closer to the information and closer to the problem than you are. And that's not how people think. In this model, see, this person, the foreman over here is going to be the decision maker. We all know that. But these people, they know the job better than that person. Why? Because they're spending 8 hours a day doing it. They know exactly, they're making radius. They know what, if I twist the wire this way, it's harder for my wrist than this way. Or if I sit in my chair, they know that. They know stuff about the job this person doesn't know. And that's what's happening in your person, with your person.
Thank you. And on that note, Marcus, bring us home.
So this was definitely so far one of my favorite. Your book is one of my favorites business books, if not generally books to read, because the story in itself is so compelling. The change and the impact you made is so evident, and I'm really happy you were that angry to write this book. So thank you for that. Thank you for your time here and all these insights. I think we've got some really great stuff here, and I maybe we have you back for once we read the new book. I'm sure it's as brilliant as the first one, and it's more impressive that you wrote another one. I think language is really, it's interesting because, I've been looking at wicked problems, more and more complex problems, and I think language itself is an amazingly smart and essential part of what seemingly is a big puzzle piece of all the problems out there. So as usual, we have all the links to the books and things in the notes. For now, I'll just say thank you, David. Thank you for your time, insights, and being here. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Wicked Podcast with co-host Marcus Kirsch and me, Troy Norcross.
Please subscribe on Podomatic, iTunes, or Spotify. You can find all relevant links in the show notes. Please tell us your thoughts in the comment section and let us know about any books for future episodes.
You can also get in touch with us directly on Twitter on @WickedandBeyond or @Troy_Norcross. Also, learn more about the Wicked Company book and the Wicked Company project at wickedcompany.com.